The story begins with a familiar sight for Alex Carter, a human soldier who has spent most of his life serving in the toughest corners of space. Stationed on Zephyr Station, an isolated military outpost on the far edge of the galaxy, Alex is no stranger to dangerous missions. The station is far from the reach of civilization, surrounded by the vast emptiness of deep space, and the crew is constantly on edge. Their latest assignment is to investigate a strange distress signal that has come from a planet long abandoned by its inhabitants. No one knows why the signal is there, but the urgency in the message is enough to send Alex and his team down to the planet's surface. As Alex and his squad of elite soldiers descend through the thick atmosphere of the planet, something feels off. The barren landscape stretches out beneath them, desolate and silent. There are no signs of life, only the echo of their footsteps and the whirring of their advanced cloaking suits as they move forward. Alex leads the team, scanning the horizon with a sense of unease creeping in. Something isn't right, but he can't put his finger on it. Without warning, the silence is shattered by a sudden attack. Alien figures, cloaked and barely visible, spring from the shadows. Cell-core bounty hunters. These assassins are notorious across the galaxy for their ruthlessness and advanced technology. Their cloaking devices make them nearly invisible, their weapons are deadly, and their combat training is second to none. The human soldiers, caught off guard, scramble to react, but it's too late. The Excellicore strike with surgical precision, taking down one of Alex's comrades in seconds. Panic spreads quickly through the team as they realize the situation has spiraled out of control. Alex tries to stay calm, barking orders to regroup, but one by one, his fellow soldiers fall. Their weapons, though advanced, are no match for the Excellicore's superior tactics. The chaos unfolds in a blur. Explosions, laser fire, and the sound of metal crunching as his team is overrun. In the midst of the chaos, Alex watches helplessly as another soldier is dragged away, disappearing into the shadows. His heart races, but his focus remains. He knows he has to act fast, or they'll all be wiped out. Then, amidst the violent battle, something unexpected happens. Alex, while trying to evade an ambush, stumbles upon something he didn't expect to see. An injured female alien lies crumpled on the ground, her armor torn and her body bloodied. Alex doesn't hesitate. He moves toward her, his training kicking in as he scans the area for threats. The bounty hunters are closing in, but the figure on the ground is something he hasn't seen before. She is Excellicore, a member of the same ruthless race that is hunting him and his team. But she isn't just any Excellicore. She's different. Her blood is red, her eyes are full of fear and desperation, not the cold cruelty of her people. Her name is Lyra. She is the daughter of one of the most powerful Excellicore warlords. Her ship had been shot down, and she's been on the run ever since, hunted by her own people. The more Alex listens to her, the more he realizes that this isn't just any mission. It's a trap. The Excellicore have been waiting for someone to find Lyra. She is a defector, someone who is actively fighting against her father's oppressive regime. Lyra reveals that her father, a brutal warlord, has been expanding his empire by enslaving entire worlds. She couldn't take it anymore, so she ran. But her people do not forgive betrayal. As Alex processes the shocking truth, the battle rages on. The bounty hunters are closing in fast, and Alex knows he needs to make a choice. His orders are clear. Leave the alien behind and get out of there. But something in Lyra's eyes makes him hesitate. She's not just an enemy. She's someone who wants to stop the very evil Alex has been fighting against. Against all reason and his own better judgment, Alex decides to help her. He knows it's a risk, but he can't just leave someone to die. Not when they could have valuable information. Not when they could be allies in the fight against the Excellicore. With no time to waste, Alex scoops Lyra into his arms, carrying her with every ounce of strength he has left. His mind races. How long before the rest of the team is completely wiped out? How long before the Excellicore realize he's defied their orders? They're not just hunting him now. They're hunting both of them. The sense of urgency builds as the countdown to their doom begins. The cloaking devices of the enemy flicker in and out of sight as they close in. It's a race against time, and Alex's heart pounds in his chest. His teammates are counting on him to escape with the information, to survive. But he can't leave Lyra to die. Just as Alex makes it to the edge of the battlefield, a sudden explosion shakes the ground beneath him. A massive piece of debris crashes down, forcing Alex to dive for cover with Lyra in his arms. The blast sends a shockwave through the planet's surface, throwing him off balance. They are surrounded now, and the Celicor know exactly where they are. Alex's pulse races as he realizes the magnitude of his decision. The weight of it all presses down on him. One wrong move, and they're both dead. The bounty hunters are closing in. Alex has only moments to react. He turns toward the ruined remains of their ship, calculating his next move. But as the shadows draw closer, something inside him pushes him forward. He's not going to leave her behind. Not now. Not ever. The screen cuts to black, leaving the audience hanging, wondering if Alex and Lyra will make it out alive, or if the bounty hunters will catch them in their deadly pursuit. Alex gritted his teeth as the controls of the damaged ship trembled beneath his hands. The ship, once a sleek and reliable vessel, was now struggling against the weight of the damage sustained in the fierce firefight. He had managed to get Lyra aboard, but they were far from safe. The Celicor bounty hunters were relentless, and despite Alex's best efforts, their escape had come at a heavy cost. The engines sputtered, and the alarms blared, warning them of an impending crash. Alex's heart raced as he fought to keep the ship steady, but the damage was too severe. "Hold on," Alex shouted over the noise, glancing at Lyra, who was clutching the seat beside her. Her face was pale from the shock of the battle, but her eyes were determined. She had already proven herself strong, but now Alex knew that survival wasn't just about strength, it was about luck. And right now, they had none. The ship spiraled out of control as the last of the engines failed. The surface of the planet loomed below them, rough, rocky, and unforgiving. Alex's mind raced. Where could they land? How could they survive? He knew that if they didn't make it, they were both dead. With one final attempt, Alex pulled the ship's emergency thrusters, hoping against hope that they could slow their descent. The crash landing was violent. The ship slammed into the desolate moon's surface, sending rocks and debris flying as the craft skidded and buckled. For a moment, everything went black. When Alex finally regained his senses, his ears were ringing, and his vision was blurred. His whole body ached as he struggled to sit up. He was covered in dust and dirt, but worse than that, the ship was wrecked. The controls were shot, and the ship's hull had been torn apart. It wasn't going anywhere. "Lyra," Alex called out, his voice hoarse. He quickly unbuckled himself from his seat and stumbled to her side. She was already stirring, her hand pressed to her head. "I'm okay," she murmured, rubbing her temples. Her voice was shaky, but there was still a fire in her eyes. "What happened?" "We crashed," Alex said, helping her to her feet. "The ship's done for. We're stranded." Lyra looked around at the barren moon they had landed on. It was a desolate, empty place, with jagged rocks and endless stretches of dust. The sky above them was a dull shade of red, with no sign of life in sight. The harsh winds whipped around them, and the temperature was dropping fast. They had no shelter, no food, and no means of communication with their own forces. They were completely cut off. Alex's mind raced. They had to fix the ship. They had to escape. But the Celicor were already searching for them. He could feel it, their relentless pursuit. If they didn't move fast, they would be hunted down. Time was running out. He glanced back at Lyra, who was already scanning the wreckage for anything useful. She was pulling pieces of metal and wiring from the wreckage, trying to make sense of it all. Her calmness in the face of disaster impressed him. It reminded him that, despite everything, she was a survivor. "We need to get the engines working," Alex said, wiping dust from his face. "If we don't, we'll be sitting ducks. The Excelsior will find us for sure." Lyra nodded, already moving to a damaged panel near the rear of the ship. "I can help," she said, her voice steady. "I've worked on ships before." Alex watched as she worked with quick, practiced hands. It was clear she knew what she was doing, but even her skill wouldn't be enough without parts. The ship was in bad shape, and they had limited resources. As he helped her, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. While they worked, Alex tried to clear his mind of the battle they had just fought. He thought about his comrades, the soldiers he had known for years. Most of them were dead now, taken down by the Excelsior before they even had a chance to fight back. The faces of the fallen soldiers flashed in his mind, and a pang of guilt tugged at his heart. He had made it out, but at what cost? His thoughts were interrupted as Lyra looked up from the wreckage. "I'm sorry about your friends," she said quietly, her voice soft. "I know what it feels like to lose everything." Alex's eyes met hers, and for the first time, he saw the weight of her words. Her face, which had been hard and fierce, softened with something that almost looked like empathy. She wasn't just some alien. She wasn't the enemy. She was a person. Someone who had seen her own people suffer. Someone who had lost everything. She understood loss. "I didn't think you'd care," Alex admitted, his voice rough. "After everything we've been through, after what your people have done, I thought you'd be different." Lyra looked away, her eyes focused on the ship's broken pieces. "I'm not my father," she said, her voice tinged with regret. "My father, he's a monster. He's been tearing apart worlds, enslaving people. I couldn't live with that anymore. That's why I left." Alex stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. The Excelsior were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless conquerors, bent on domination. Lyra's father, a warlord, had been one of the most feared figures in the galaxy, and yet here she was, risking her life to stop him. "I didn't want to fight for him," she continued, her voice growing softer. "I wanted freedom. I wanted to see what it was like to live without fear, without control." Alex felt a knot form in his stomach. He understood that feeling. He had fought in countless battles, had seen things that no man should ever see, but he had never once felt like he was fighting for something bigger than himself. He was a soldier, a weapon. But now, in this moment, with Lyra standing beside him, he realized that maybe he had been wrong all along. Maybe there was more to the fight than just survival. As they worked together to fix the ship, Alex felt a connection growing between them. It wasn't just the shared danger or the desperation of their situation. It was something deeper. They were both fighting for something bigger than themselves. And for the first time, Alex felt like he wasn't alone. He had a reason to fight beyond just following orders. But even as the bond between them grew, the danger wasn't over. The Excelsior were closing in, and they had to repair the ship before it was too late. The pressure was mounting, and every second that passed brought them closer to being caught. But as Alex and Lyra worked together, they both knew one thing. Survival wasn't just about escaping. It was about fighting for a future where they could both be free. The eerie silence of the moon was shattered when the first Excelsior ship appeared on the horizon. Its sleek, menacing silhouette cut through the dark sky, casting an ominous shadow over the desolate landscape. It wasn't alone. The Excelsior had come in force. Hundreds of ships, warships, transports, and scout vessels descended upon the moon like a swarm of locusts, filling the sky with a dark cloud of menace. Their engines roared as they circled the moon, searching for their quarry. Alex and Lyra had only just finished making repairs to their damaged ship when the first wave of Excelsior arrived. There was no time to waste. No time for second thoughts. Alex could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He and Lyra were trapped on a hostile moon with no allies, no escape, and only their wits to survive. "Alex, they're here," Lyra whispered, her voice tense as she scanned the skies through a cracked viewport. "They found us." Alex nodded, his jaw tightening. The stakes had never been higher. He knew that if they didn't act fast, they wouldn't make it through this. The Excellicorps were relentless, and they had all the resources of their vast empire at their disposal. Their cloaking technology made them nearly invisible, and their weapons were more advanced than anything Alex and Lyra had. But they had something else, something that Excellicorps didn't: ingenuity. The battle for survival had begun. Alex and Lyra quickly retreated into the broken remains of the ship, taking cover among the wreckage. From here, they could observe the Excellicorps ships hovering above them, their cloaking devices making them difficult to track. The aliens had already begun scanning the area, searching for any sign of life. Alex's heart raced as he watched the searchlights sweep across the moon's surface. They were closing in. "We need a plan," Alex said, his voice low but steady. "We can't let them find us. We need to fight back." Lyra nodded. "I know how they think. I've seen it before. We can use their arrogance against them." The plan wasn't much, but it was all they had. Alex had spent years in combat, using whatever tools and tactics he could to gain an advantage over superior enemies. The Excellicorps, despite their advanced technology, were still predictable in many ways. They relied on brute strength and high-tech weapons, but they didn't understand the power of guerrilla warfare, the art of striking swiftly and disappearing before the enemy could react. The two of them spent the next few hours setting traps, rigging explosives, and camouflaging themselves in the harsh landscape. Alex's mind was sharp, focused on each move. He wasn't just a soldier now. He was a strategist, working with Lyra to outsmart the Excellicorps. They used the moon's jagged terrain to their advantage, hiding in craters and using the shadows to stay out of sight. The cloaking devices they had salvaged from their wrecked ship were a game-changer, allowing them to move undetected by the enemy. The first Excellicorps soldiers arrived on the surface, their boots crunching on the rocky ground as they searched for any sign of their quarry. Alex and Lyra watched from their hidden position, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Their breath was steady, their eyes locked on the enemy, and every muscle in their bodies was ready to explode into action. As the Excellicorps soldiers moved past their position, Alex made his move. He triggered the first trap, a series of explosive charges buried beneath the surface. The ground shook violently as the Excellicorps were sent flying by the blast, their weapons firing wildly into the air. Alex and Lyra darted forward, using the chaos to their advantage. "We've got them on the run," Alex muttered, his heart pounding with adrenaline. The element of surprise was theirs, and for a moment, the Excellicorps were disoriented. But it wasn't enough. The Excellicorps quickly regrouped, their advanced technology allowing them to quickly adapt. Alex and Lyra had barely managed to escape before the Excellicorps retaliated with deadly force. Alex knew that one mistake could be their last, but he was determined to keep them off balance. "We have to keep them guessing," Alex said, his voice hard. "Keep moving, keep striking, and don't give them a chance to figure out what we're doing." Lyra smiled, a fierce glint in her eyes. "I like the way you think." They worked together like a well-oiled machine, using a mix of human tactics and alien technology to continue the fight. They disabled the Excellicorps' communication systems, leaving them unable to call for reinforcements. They used cloaking devices to ambush the enemy, striking from the shadows before disappearing again. Each move was calculated, each strike designed to confuse and demoralize the Excellicorps. But it wasn't just about tactics, it was about survival. Alex and Lyra were fighting for their lives, and with each passing moment, they grew stronger. Lyra's combat skills were more than just a surprise. They were a revelation. She moved with a fluid grace, striking down enemies with precision, her alien weapons in perfect harmony with her human ingenuity. One close encounter had Alex cornered, a group of Excellicorps closing in on him from all sides. His heart pounded as he realized the trap he'd set for them had failed. They were about to be overwhelmed. But then, at the last possible moment, Lyra appeared out of nowhere, using a long-range weapon to take down the closest threat. Alex quickly followed suit, firing his own weapon and taking out 2 more Xelacor soldiers. "Nice timing," Alex said with a grin, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Lyra winked. "I've got your back." But just as the moment of victory seemed within their grasp, a massive explosion rocked the surface of the moon. One of the Xelacor ships had launched a full-scale orbital bombardment, sending debris and rubble flying. Alex and Lyra were forced to dive for cover, narrowly avoiding the blast. The landscape around them was torn apart, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. "We're running out of time," Alex muttered, his voice grim. They had pushed the Xelacor to their limits, but now they were in more danger than ever. The chase was far from over. The battle for survival was reaching its peak, and with the moon's environment rapidly becoming more hostile, Alex and Lyra had to move quickly if they were going to escape alive. But one thing was clear: they weren't giving up. Not now. Not ever. The suspense was thick, and the tension was palpable. Every decision, every move could be their last. But Alex and Lyra were in this together, and as long as they had each other, they would keep fighting. The ground beneath Alex's boots trembled as the massive shadow of the Xelacor warship cast over the desolate moon. The sky, once dark and empty, was now filled with the menacing hum of its engines. It was an overwhelming sight. An entire warship, its massive guns aimed down at the moon, its engines powerful enough to shake the very ground. Alex had never seen a ship of this size before, and he knew that no matter how many tricks they had up their sleeves, they couldn't win a direct fight against something like this. "Alex, we can't fight that thing head-on," Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "If we try, they'll obliterate us. We need a plan." Alex didn't answer immediately. His mind raced. The odds were impossible, but there had to be a way. There always was. The Xelacor were a technologically superior enemy, but they weren't invincible. There had to be a weak point, some place where he could strike to take the ship down. A realization hit him like a lightning bolt. The warship's massive guns and cloaking systems were formidable, but they weren't invulnerable. If they could infiltrate the ship and disable its core systems from the inside, they might stand a chance. It was a risky move, one that could end in disaster, but there was no other option. "We're going in," Alex said, his voice firm. He turned to Lyra, determination in his eyes. "We're going to disable that ship from the inside." Lyra looked at him, her brow furrowing. "Are you sure? The chances of us surviving long enough to get close are slim." Alex's gaze hardened. "I don't have a choice. We either take it down, or we die trying." With a nod, Lyra agreed. They had no time to waste. They quickly made their way to the remains of their damaged ship, which had somehow remained mostly intact. Using the cloaking devices they'd salvaged, they managed to mask their movements, making their way toward the Xelacor warship as it loomed overhead. The plan was simple in theory, but execution would be everything. Alex and Lyra would sneak aboard the ship using the cover of the moon's harsh terrain. The ship had several landing bays, and if they could slip past the outer defenses, they might be able to board undetected. Once inside, they would disable the ship's core systems and trigger an explosive device to finish the job. It felt like a long walk to the enemy's lair. The closer they got, the heavier the air seemed to press down on them. The warship's guns rotated ominously above them, as though searching for any sign of life. Alex's heart raced as the ship's massive engines hummed ominously. Every step they took was fraught with danger, and Alex couldn't afford to make a mistake. "We're almost there," Lyra whispered, keeping close to Alex's side. Her voice was steady, but there was a hint of tension in her eyes. Alex gave a tight nod, his mind focused on the task ahead. They reached the landing bay undetected, slipping past patrols of robotic sentries and Xelacor soldiers who were too busy securing the perimeter to notice them. Once they were inside the bay, Alex quickly scanned the area. It was a labyrinth of corridors, filled with alien technology. The sound of footsteps echoed through the halls as guards patrolled the area, their glowing eyes scanning for any sign of intruders. The danger was immediate. Alex and Lyra would need to be quick and precise. They made their way down a narrow corridor, the soft hum of the ship's systems echoing in their ears. The tension between them was thick, but they communicated silently, Lyra using hand signals to direct their movements, Alex staying a step ahead, always alert. They'd reached the heart of the warship, a massive chamber that housed the ship's core systems. As they crept into the chamber, Alex's pulse quickened. The heart of the warship was heavily guarded. Zelkor soldiers stood watch over the core, their energy weapons at the ready. The sight of the guards made Alex pause. It would take a lot more than stealth to get past them. He took a deep breath and signaled to Lyra. It was time for action. Alex and Lyra moved swiftly, using their cloaking devices to stay out of sight. Alex knew they had to strike fast. Any delay could result in them being discovered. In a blur of motion, Alex lunged at the nearest guard, knocking him out cold before he had a chance to react. Lyra was right behind him, her combat training kicking in as she quickly took down another guard with a quick strike. The remaining soldiers didn't know what hit them, and before they could raise the alarm, Alex and Lyra disabled the rest with swift precision. The ship's heart was now within their grasp. But their victory was short-lived. As they approached the core, a loud alarm blared throughout the ship, signaling that the intruders had been detected. Red lights flashed across the room, and the sound of robotic sentries charging toward them grew louder. There was no more time for subtlety. Alex and Lyra had to move quickly. "Alex, we need to get out of here," Lyra urged, her voice sharp with urgency. "We've triggered the lockdown." "We're not leaving yet," Alex replied, his face hardening with resolve. They had come this far. He wasn't going to back down now. He moved toward the control panel, his fingers flying over the buttons as he began the process of overriding the ship's core systems. The countdown had begun. The Xelacor were closing in, but Alex knew what he had to do. He planted the explosive device, a last-ditch effort to destroy the warship from within. It was a risky move, but it was their only option. The ship was too dangerous, and if they didn't stop it now, they would never have another chance. 5 minutes, Alex muttered as he set the timer. "We need to get out now." Lyra nodded, her eyes wide with fear and excitement. "Let's go." They bolted from the chamber, sprinting down the corridors as the ship's defenses came alive around them. The walls trembled as explosions rocked the interior of the warship. The countdown continued relentlessly. Alex and Lyra moved like shadows, barely avoiding capture as they ran through the twisting maze of the ship's halls. The explosive device would make sure that the warship would be nothing more than a pile of scrap when they were done. As they reached the outer hull, the warship's alarms grew louder, signaling the imminent destruction. They climbed into a small shuttle, using the last of their cloaking devices to avoid detection. With a final glance back at the warship, Alex and Lyra watched as the timer ticked down to 0. The warship erupted in a massive explosion, sending a shockwave that rattled the shuttle. Alex and Lyra were thrown back into their seats, their hearts pounding with the force of the blast. The warship, once an imposing figure in the sky, was no more. They had done it. They had taken down the Xelacor's mightiest weapon. But the war was far from over. As the smoke cleared and they flew toward safety, Alex knew one thing for sure. They had only just begun their fight for freedom. The sky above them was filled with the thundering roar of Xelacor warships. Alex and Lyra had managed to escape the initial wave of destruction, but now the enemy had regrouped, and they were coming for them. The Xelacor forces were vast and merciless, closing in from all sides, ready for the final assault. The countdown to their last stand had begun, and Alex could feel the weight of it pressing down on him. They had no time to prepare. Their ship, a mere speck in the vastness of space, was no match for the Excelsior fleet. The situation was grim, and the feeling of inevitability hung over them. The only option left was to make a stand, to fight until the last breath. But as Alex watched Lyra, his heart twisted. She was young, full of hope, and yet caught in a war she never asked for. He couldn't help but wonder if this was the end for them. If it was, he needed to make sure she survived. Her survival, he realized, was the key to everything. Lyra was at the controls of their ship, her hands trembling but steady as she fought to maneuver them through the incoming barrage of laser fire. But Alex could see the fatigue in her eyes, the exhaustion from the battles they had fought, the weight of the past, and the future pressing down on her. He stepped toward her, his voice low and steady. "Lyra, we need to talk." She didn't look up at first, her focus on evading the incoming fire, but she knew what he was going to say. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the noise of the ship's engines. "But we don't have time, Alex. We need to fight. We can't give up now." Alex took a deep breath. The moment of truth had arrived. He knew what he had to do. "Lyra, I'm not going to make it out of here." Lyra froze, her hands tightening on the controls. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "I'm going to stay behind. I'll hold off the Excelsior long enough for you to escape. You have to live, Lyra. You have to go back and bring peace to your people." Tears welled in Lyra's eyes as she shook her head in disbelief. "No, Alex. I won't leave you. I can't." "Lyra." Alex's voice broke slightly, but he forced himself to stay strong. "I don't have a choice. If I stay, I can buy you the time you need. If you live, there's a chance to end this war. But if we both die here, nothing will change. You have to be the one to carry on the fight." The silence that followed felt unbearable. The weight of Alex's decision hung between them like a thick fog, one that neither of them could escape. Lyra's hands trembled as she reached for him, her face a mixture of pain and disbelief. "I can't do it, Alex. I can't live with myself knowing you're giving your life for me." Lyra pleaded, her voice breaking. "We've been through so much together. You're my only hope, the only reason I've kept fighting. Don't do this." Alex placed his hand on hers, his gaze soft but resolute. "You have to. You'll bring the fight for peace back to your people. You'll lead them the way your father never could. If I'm gone, you'll be the one to make things right. You have the strength, Lyra. You've always had it." Lyra stared at him, her mind racing. She had never felt so helpless, so lost. The thought of losing him, of carrying on without him by her side, was too much to bear. They had been through so many battles together, fought side by side, and now Alex was asking her to continue without him. The man who had saved her, who had stood by her, was willing to lay down his life for her future. She couldn't fathom it. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You can't ask me to do this. I love you, Alex. I need you." At those words, Alex's heart shattered. He had always known there was something between them, something deeper than friendship, but hearing her say those words, her confession, was both the sweetest and the most heartbreaking thing he could have imagined. It was as if the world had stopped, the chaos of the impending battle fading into the background. "I love you too, Lyra," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But this is the only way. If you love me, you'll do this, for both of us, for everyone." Lyra wiped the tears from her eyes, struggling to hold herself together. She could feel the weight of his words, the finality of the moment. Her heart ached as she realized that she had no choice. If she stayed, they would both die. But if she left, she could honor Alex's sacrifice by carrying on the fight. She could make sure his death wasn't in vain. She nodded slowly, the decision tearing her apart. "I'll do it, Alex, but you have to promise me. Promise me you'll survive long enough to know that I'll carry your memory with me." Alex's lips curled into a small, bittersweet smile. "I promise." The sound of the Excelsior ships closing in grew louder, and Alex knew their time was running out. He turned and began to prepare the final defenses for the ship. Lyra, though torn, set the course for a nearby planet, the only chance of escape. "I'll never forget you," Lyra whispered, choking on her tears. "You'll always be with me." As the countdown to the final assault began, Alex positioned himself by the ship's weapon systems, ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. Lyra's ship was already in motion, the engines humming as it sped toward safety. With one last look at the woman he loved, Alex knew he had made the right decision. His sacrifice would give her the chance to survive, to fight, and to bring peace to her people. And with that, Alex Carter, the soldier who had never backed down from a fight, prepared to face his final battle. His only hope was that Lyra would live to tell the story, his story, and the story of how love and sacrifice could change the galaxy. The last battle was over. The skies had cleared, and the destruction of the Excelsior fleet was complete. Alex and Lyra had managed to pull off a daring final strike. Against all odds, it wasn't the first time they'd fought for their lives, but this victory felt different. It was the culmination of everything they'd been through together. The battles, the losses, and the sacrifices. Yet the victory was bittersweet. As Alex stood on the battlefield, the wreckage of the Excelsior ships scattered around them, his thoughts were consumed with the faces of those they had lost. Bonner, the loyal soldier, the brave men and women who had fought by his side and given their lives for this moment, were gone. Alex's heart ached for them, but he knew they had fought for something greater than themselves. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. She, too, felt the weight of their loss. Her father, the tyrant who had sought to conquer the galaxy, was no more. The Excelsior forces had been shattered, their reign of terror brought to an end. But Lyra had not emerged from this battle unscathed. The emotional scars were deep. She had lost her family, her home, and her world. But there was something else now, something new. A chance, a future. "Alex." Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. She looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and sadness in her eyes. "We did it. We've won." Alex nodded, his voice quiet but resolute. "We did, but at what cost?" Lyra stepped closer, her eyes softening. She could see the pain in his expression, the same pain that she herself carried. The price of victory had been high, and it wasn't just the physical toll of the battles. It was the emotional toll, the people they had lost, and the parts of themselves that would never heal. Yet, in that moment, they both knew one thing. They had fought for something worth living for. And now, they had the chance to build something new from the ashes of war. "The cost doesn't matter," she said, her voice steady. "We have to look forward, not back. We've won. We're free." Alex glanced at her, surprised by the strength in her words. He had seen her at her lowest, after the battle when she had lost so much. But now she stood tall beside him, ready to move forward. He could see the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had burned in him since he first decided to take up arms against the Excelsior. They were both survivors, shaped by the horrors of war, but now they had the chance to build a better future. Lyra's gaze softened as she turned to face him. "Alex, there's something I need to ask you." Alex raised an eyebrow, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What is it?" Lyra took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. "Now that we've won, and my father's reign has ended, I want to ask you something important. In my culture, marriage is more than just a union. It's a symbol of strength, of unity. It's a commitment to fighting for a better future together. Alex, I want to marry you. I want to fight with you, not just for survival, but for something more, for peace, for justice, for a future where people like us don't have to fear tyrants like the Excelsior." Alex's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected this, hadn't seen it coming. But as he looked at Lyra, standing before him with a mixture of hope and determination in her eyes, he realized that she was asking him for something that meant more than just a commitment. She was asking him to be a part of something bigger, to build a life together in the wake of destruction, to heal the wounds of war, to create something new. It was a daunting thought, but it felt right. Lyra reached out, taking his hand in hers. "Alex, will you marry me? Will you join me in this fight for a new future?" For a moment, Alex didn't know what to say. His mind raced. He had been so focused on the mission, on the battles, on surviving, that he hadn't stopped to think about the future. But now, as Lyra's words sank in, he realized that this was his future. This was the woman who had stood by him through everything, who had fought alongside him, who had helped him find a reason to keep going even when everything seemed lost. He could see it now, the possibility of a life beyond the war, beyond the endless fighting. A life where they could build something new, something good. Slowly, he smiled, a smile that was soft and full of emotion. "Yes, Lyra, I'll marry you. Together, we'll fight for that future. We'll fight for peace." Lyra's eyes brightened, her face lighting up with relief and joy. She stepped forward and embraced him, her heart pounding in her chest. It was a simple moment, but it held so much weight. In that embrace, they both knew that everything had changed. The battles were over, the war was won, and now they had the chance to create something lasting, something beautiful. Together, they could rebuild the galaxy and ensure that the darkness of the Selkor's reign would never return. As they pulled back from the embrace, Lyra looked up at Alex with a smile. "This is just the beginning, Alex. We've won the war, but the real work starts now. We have to rebuild, we have to unite the galaxy, and we have to make sure that no one else has to suffer like we did." Alex nodded, his heart full of resolve. "We'll do it, together." The future stretched out before them, wide and uncertain, but filled with hope. The war was over, but their journey had just begun. There was so much to do, so many people to help, and so many challenges ahead. But for the first time, Alex felt ready. With Lyra by his side, they could face anything. They had already defeated the Selkor, and now they would fight for the future, for a future where peace, justice, and hope would reign. And so, with a new alliance forged in the fires of battle and sacrifice, Alex and Lyra stepped forward into their new life. A life of love, of purpose, and of endless possibilities. The galaxy was theirs to rebuild, and together, they would make sure that the horrors of the past never came again.